Hey all, this is John Chihawk of Anti-Hero Brand Press. Just got done watching WrestleMania 34. I started to record a video going on a rant about how I disagreed with, like 80% of the finishes to the matches. But I deleted that video because I'd rather go on a rant about Hollywood and television and how they've treated comic books as this little dirty little secret that they utilize for, making billions of dollars and merchandising and making franchises. And I mean, in the modern era of comic books in 1998, New Line Cinema put Blade out. And the movie was extremely successful. People don't really recognize that Blade was really the start of the new comic book movie revolution. Like everybody says, oh, it was X-Men because X-Men, was the really big franchise that started in 2000. But Blade was kind of the second or third tier character that you could really, he was a little expendable. You could do what you wanted with him because only really diehard comic book fans were going to know who Blade was. And so it's something that gave, Blade got 3 movies, it got a TV series, it got a couple of animated movies, and then spun off from there when you got, the first 3 X-Men movies, and then the start of the Wolverine movies, and then the second 3 X-Men movies, and now they're working on even more. I love comic books. Jimmy Palmiotti and his wife, Amanda Conner, who are both writers in comic books. Jimmy has been inking comics and writing comics for at least 20 years, if not more than that. I first really gained wind of him with Ash and Event Comics and 22 Brides and things like that back in the mid to late 90s. That's also when I first caught wind of Amanda Conner, because she started drawing some of the Painkiller Jane and 22 Brides type stuff. And now they're married. They're big proponents of reading. They're big proponents of indie creators. They're also big proponents of just comic books. And today Jimmy put out a tweet that asked people to ask Hollywood to start asking, or not asking, but thanking the comic book industry and the creators and the industry that has given them so much. Because let's be honest, last 20, 25 years, Hollywood's come out with some, only a handful of really, truly good and original ideas. And there are some directors and creators and writers who are coming up with those ideas, and they've always done that. But for the most part, the vast majority of product that has come out is a remake of some sort. It's a comic book property, it's a video game property, it's a book being adapted into a movie. It's a foreign film that was adapted from a book that's now being Americanized. Hollywood doesn't have a lot of creative juices and a lot of creative flow anymore. They're constantly looking and buying up product. Netflix is doing it left and right. They just paid Rob Liefeld $1 million, I believe it was, for portions of his Extreme Universe comics. It does not include the characters Glory or any of the members of the Team Youngblood from the early Image days. They're just buying up all these properties so that they have content, for the next 5, 10, 20 years. And that's great. And comics are in vogue and they're being brought to the forefront. But comic books themselves are still very much the bastard child of the media world and the art world. My friend and comic book store owner Charlie Harris, who owns Charlie's Comic Books here in Tucson, Arizona, where I live, his shop doesn't say Charlie's Comics. It says Charlie's Comic Books. And when Kevin Smith, the director, came to town to do a Q&A, the night before he went to Charlie's and he did like a live stream on Facebook that gave Charlie a lot of exposure. Thousands and thousands of people saw the live stream and, retweeted it and reblogged it or shared it on Facebook, checked him out and stuff like that. Gave him free freaking press from somebody who loves comic books as well. And he asked Charlie this really important question. And the question he asked is, why does it say comic books and not comics? outside on your sign. And Charlie explained that I think it was in the 70s, Jack Kirby was on Johnny Carson. And Jack Kirby was introduced as the king of comics. And when Carson introduced him, Carson was just like, this guy is Jack Kirby, the king of comics. I've been doing comedy for, however long he'd been doing comedy for at that point. He was like, I've never heard of this guy. I'm the king of comics. I don't know who this guy is. So it was kind of like a moment to really throw shade on, to use modern vernacular, to throw shade on somebody who's been creating comic books since the 40s. And so Charlie says comic books instead of comics because there's an inherent level of respect when you add the word book to the end of comics. It can be taken more seriously because we think of literature as a book. We don't necessarily think of it as a graphic novel. And therein lies the problem. I'm not a fan of Deadpool. I'll voice it all day long. I'm also not a fan of Stephenie Meyer and the Twilight series. And regardless of that, those get people reading. They get people into comic book stores to read Deadpool. They get people into, libraries or bookstores to read, the Twilight series. And that's a good thing. It's never a bad thing if people are reading and they're reading anything, something that jogs their mind creatively. And the hashtag that Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Connor are asking people to endorse and promote on Twitter, holding up a picture of you holding comics, it says hashtag I love comics. And I've posted one for myself, for my friend Agnew, my sidekick Agnew. He's at Mr_Agnew on Twitter. And he's been the star of a number of different comic books as well. I love comic books and I take them very seriously, but I also have a lot of fun reading them. And when I'm having fun, I think that's the most important part because you're learning, but it's not being thrust upon you, which is what I wanted to kind of do with my comic books when I started creating them. And one of the things that I remember most about early on creating these characters was a Christmas at my mom's house where everybody would show up. It was probably 40 or 50 people throughout the day, packed into my mom's little tiny house. And her aunt and uncle, Bobby and Roseanne, her mom's brother and his wife were there. And I don't remember what they asked, but they asked about what I was doing, and my mom said, "Oh, he's creating a comic book right now," and they got super excited about it, and they said, "Well, you should make the characters Mexican like we are." For people who don't know it, I come from a Mexican background. My mom is Mexican, my dad's half Mexican, also Irish and Czechoslovakian as well. I'm very aware of all the parts of my culture, but mostly and predominantly aware of my role and my heritage as having Mexican background. I have an Eastern Bloc last name, which has caused me a lot of issues throughout my youth. Bullied and jumped and beaten up because I didn't look, sound, or act Mexican, I guess. I was jumped by Mexican kids, black kids, because I had the audacity to say, I'm Mexican. I'm just a Weddle, which means I have light skin, I have light eyes, my hair is darker now, and more and more people now can see the Mexican heritage that I have, but back then it was very, very hard to see, and kids are very cliquish, and they do what they're taught, kind of thing. But going back to what my aunt and uncle said, they said you should make the characters Mexican like us, and at the time all the characters that I had at that point, I think it was Nash, Agnew, Kyle, and maybe Guri, and I hadn't thought about any of that, honestly. Most of the characters I read were white characters for all I knew. Ethnicity and heritage wasn't really brought up that much in comics in the 80s and the late 80s and the 90s. So when my aunt and uncle said that, even though I knew, I am Mexican, it still bothered me, and it really kind of ticked me off, for lack of better terminology. But the more I thought about, how dare you tell me how to make these comics, and how dare you tell me how to make my characters, the more it thought in my head, I'm like, well, you already have the characters, fleshed out. Like, look at it and think about it. And I became a little more mindful to that back in the day. And Nash and Guri were the first ones to get any sort of ethnicity added to them. Nash and Guri are both Mexican. It took a really, really long time. It was something that was very organic, but it was something that was being considered for a very, very long time. Nash's girlfriend and the main female character in the book, Kyle, she's black. Guri, Kyle, and Nash's best friends. Jane is, she's Asian. I haven't really, specified, where her family of origin comes from, like what nationality they originally were. Are they Korean or Japanese or Chinese or what? But she's Asian. And then the character M, she is, she's Caucasian, she's white. But back in 2006, I decided that she was going to be a lesbian, and so she's also a minority in that factor as well. And then the character Flux that came around in 2010 and 2011, she might be the only there's not a lot of diversity with her, but in that there is diversity because it's a very wide range of characters that I have with different colors and backgrounds and makeups, and it was all done intentionally, but it was all done organically at the same time. I think there are some things that are definitely that might seem forced or what have you, but please keep in mind when you're reading my comics and you get to that point that this was something that was very much in my mind for a very, very long time, and something that I considered for a very long time, and it wasn't to ostracize anybody else. It was to have representation of people that I identify with, or how I identify. Yeah, I have lighter colored skin and I have hazel eyes, but I still identify as Latino, and that's very important to me as not only a creator but as a person, especially in this day and age where certain people are being said that they're less than. I mean, it's always happened, but it's being said at a much more public level by much more influential people, sadly, to say that, people that I love and that are part of my family are lesser people because, a few generations ago they came from Mexico or what have you. And to me, that's what comics is all about. It's the 4-color universe, which means it's always been political. It's always been about societal issues. It's always been about social issues. So hashtag I love comics, and I'm going to keep diversity and storytelling in my books. Hope you can respect that. But if not, I hope maybe you can at least learn something from it and why I did that. I will be back with more and more videos. I've been slacking lately, and I do apologize for anybody who's been watching them and enjoying them. Once again, this is John Chihak of Anti-Hero Brand Press. You can check out my Patreon, which is still looking for its first backer or first patron at patreon.com/antiherobrand, or my all ages Patreon, which is patreon.com/ahbkids with a Z, not an S. Hope to see you guys soon. Leave comments, likes, or just subscribe. See you soon. Bye.